All right, welcome back. So the next presenter is one of our gold sponsors, FE Technologies. We have Cynan McWilliam, who is a service manager. He will be presenting the FE Technologies ALMA API integrations. Over to you, Cynan.
Hey, thanks, Caroline. Yeah, so as Caroline said, my name's Cynan McWilliam. I've been the service manager at FE Technologies for 7 years. And I've been invited here to talk about the software development we have done to integrate with ALMA. And then, let's see if I get the slides to move. So Sort Assistant is the first product I'm going to talk about. We developed
Cynan,
this.
you don't have your screen.
Oh,
no,
no,
you're
my
not showing
screen's
anything.
not showing. Let me find that button. Sorry. How about that? Does that make it a bit better?
Yes. Perfect.
All right, excellent. Right. Just move some windows around. So this is Sort Assistant. This is a product that we developed to allow staff to efficiently process returns and transits. It displays the relevant information using color-coded bars, icons, and text prompts, prints out hold and transit slips as required, and it's all based on custom rule sets that you set as a library. So initially, it was developed to use SIP2 for all the communication with your LMS. The information in the SIP2, the check-in and item requests for information, was used to determine how the software reacts. If it was successfully returned, we'll display that on the screen. If it needed to go into transit, we would put that on the screen and print a receipt if needed. If it was to put on hold and go to a hold shelf, we would put that information. And all that information was coming out of SIP2. And we would base our rules on the individual fields that came that way. When University of Sydney moved into using Sort Assistant with their ALMA, when they moved across, we discovered that ALMA wasn't providing all the details and the information that we normally run into Sort Assistant. Things such as hold and transit details, that were in the API calls that we weren't at that point using. So we developed and implemented API calls within our software. These run alongside SIP2. We use both of that information to create, the same kind of response on the screen. The developers worked with University of Sydney and Ex Libris and made use of ALMA's online documentation and sandbox environments to build the required calls. During our testing with the University of Sydney, we discovered that check-ins that happen via API calls were not handled the same way in ALMA as those that happen at a circulation desk. Whilst the items were being checked in, various transit functionality was not being completed, and items were not actually having all the information on the receipts displayed for what needed to be shown to patrons or the right location. They weren't being fully assigned to the next person had reserved the item effectively. The University of Sydney directed us to the scanning API call during our investigations, which we then added to happen after this as a secondary API call after the check-in, which resolved the issue. So now we have a couple of different API calls happening alongside SIP2 for each individual item that's being returned or processed through a Sort Assistant. Initially, this functionality was enabled across all of our products. But not that long ago, we were alerted that this was causing some undesirable behavior with our smart bins. Return bins, RFID bins. When the software was making those items available to customers, what was happening is the items were being returned in the bins, and ALMA was processing them as a check-in, and then it was allocating them to the next patron that had got a reservation. This was causing problems because if those bins were not emptied and a patron would come in and expect to find their book and they hadn't made it to their hold shelf, then there's going to be a bit of extra pressure on the staff member to go find those books. So what we've done in a most recent update is we've allowed us to have that scanning operation, enabled or disabled via individual products. So the sorter system can still do that scanning, so the item is fully processed, where a smart bin will have the check-in, but not go along to the next patron. Further development was taken or done to deal with extending our handling of some of the specific cases that University of Sydney and QUT had. That included temporary move requests, digitisation requests, booking requests, and requests for home delivery. So there was initial development done to actually handle these specific cases when those flags came through on the API return results. La Trobe came to us with another requirement. They had a number of items of public notes and fulfillment notes that needed to be shown to their staff so they would know how to handle the items that were going through the sorter system. They wanted this information both on the screen and on receipts. The information was already being returned in our existing API calls, so we just needed to add in an option to enable the display of this information and work out how we would format that on the receipt and on the screen. Our first attempts ended up fine when the messages were short, but our auto scaling caused unreadable blocks of miniature text when the comments were pages of text. And ALMA obviously supported very large comments, so we needed a way of managing that formatting. And we looked at various methods of formatting, restricting the number of characters, cropping the responses at a certain point. And eventually we ended up implementing flexible formatting using regex. That allows our customers to create their own custom format and text manipulations for each individual field. So you could take the first 40 characters, you could extract a certain section between keywords, even the last 20 characters. With regex, it's very powerful in the fact that you can manipulate it however you like. And that is the same for whether it goes on the screen or goes on the receipt. And we set up the configuration so that any field that came in as part of an API response could be displayed in this manner. So we didn't just restrict it to the public note and fulfillment note. We made this customizable. Envoy is our self-check software, runs on our kiosks, primarily aimed at helping patrons borrow items. But optionally, we allow you to turn on the ability to renew items, accept returns, manage reservations, fines, and fees. The sorted returns function allows returns to be processed, but also give feedback to the patron or student about what they should do with the book. For some libraries, you might just have a bin that you put all your returns in. But for others, you might have some preliminary formatting happening at this point, whether it goes straight back on the shelf or goes into a bin to be full of exceptions or holds that your staff will do more work on. And it can be configured in either a multiple item or a single item mode. And you've got some displays of that on the screen there. The University of Savoy in Mont Blanc, they allow students to return items at the kiosk, and they requested this functionality for their ALMA implementation. So we needed the Envoy software, when it was doing a return, to also do those same API calls as a sorter system. So we brought those same API calls into our self-loan software for that return functionality, which resolve that particular issue and allows them to do their returns however they choose to. Circulation is another software package that we've done integration with, not using APIs, but in another manner. This is our software solution for RFID reading and encoding and setting security at circulation desks using your RFID pad. When a staff member uses the ALMA web interface to return or check out an item, our circulation assistant handles the reading of barcodes through the RFID pad and inputs them directly into the web page. It also monitors the mode that the staff member is using and updates security values on the tags accordingly. For example, when in return mode, our circulation assistant software will provide the barcodes to the web interface whilst enabling security on the RFID tag. And vice versa, when checking out a book to a patron, it will disable security so that tag will not trigger a gate alarm. The development we did with ALMA directly was to build a profile on, initially with Chrome, on how they have structured their web page. The web extension that we install in Chrome monitors various elements of the web page, and based on the rules that we developed working with our customers, it triggers a change of the mode in the circulation assistant software that runs as a Windows application. And you can see on the screen there the basic profile around the various elements that come on the screen when you're using ALMA's web interface. Our live scanning wand has seen a lot of development as well. This is our handheld device for stock taking and collection management. It uses an Android tablet to display information to a staff member alongside the handheld RFID wand. It supports both a live LMS connection and also offline usage. Our development has been based around the online direct connection to ALMA. The live scanning wand primarily uses SIP2 for its communication, but we have implemented some API calls to pull in call numbers. And this assists the staff to identify items that trigger an alert. Especially useful when you have a large collection with a lot of similar titles. The wand is designed to scan as large an area as possible to speed up the scanning of a collection. So you need that kind of identifying items to find, a book that might have been within, half a meter away. For ALMA, we also added in the ability to use a dedicated or custom certificate to the tablet for the SSL communication. Live scanning wand, has security sockets layer encryption built in, but initially it was using a generic certificate. For ALMA, we added that ability to have a custom certificate loaded. We also added an API call to update the inventory date. This was required for the University of Sydney to assist with their stock taking project. Our Australian-based development team is primarily driven by customer requests and needs, and I regularly meet with customers and ask for feedback, and I meet weekly with the development team to discuss, what those features will be. If you have, requests, I like to hear from customers, and we like to log it so we, weight those requests more heavily in our agile process. Some of what we're coming up is we're moving towards a full API-based communication for the live scanning wand, moving away from a dependency on the SIP2 protocol. Initial rollout, which is just about to hit testing, is based around LCF support, but that will be followed up immediately by individual API support. And the support for the ALMA API is already on the roadmap as requested by a number of customers, including University of Sydney. Also on the roadmap a bit further down the track is out of place detection, where we'll be using those call numbers that are coming in from the API calls to work out when an item is possibly out of place if it doesn't match the call numbers of the items nearby. And I think that comes up to about my 15 minutes. So I'd like to thank Caroline and the University of Sydney for inviting me to present, and also everyone else for their attention.
Thank you, Simon, for that presentation. Just gonna check in because we are at 3:01. Are we entertaining questions, Ella? Or do we have any? Well,
We've got one question, so yeah, we can answer it. So it's, what do you do with the damaged books when the patrons return them? Is there any special thing in ALMA API settings?
If they're marked in the status that we have a rule for, e.g., there is like in SIP2, I'll go back to that, there is like a damage status. If you have something like that in any field in the ALMA API response, we can build a rule that will match against that field. And then you would create an alert and say as an exception. You'd pick a color for your sort assistant display and you alert to staff that, you know, this book needed to be treated separately. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, again, thank you all.
okay. Thanks, Simon.